My name's Frank Douglas, 70 years old this winter, and I've spent more of my life sorting other people's mail than opening my own. 35 years with the U.S. Postal Service taught me two things. Check every envelope twice, and never trust a stamp that looks too clean. I retired 5 years ago from the Harrisburg branch with a perfect attendance record, and just enough pension to keep the lights on, pay property tax, and treat myself to pie at the diner every Friday. These days my world is quiet. Just me, my porch radio, and the steady click of the neighborhood sprinklers. No wife anymore. Carol passed a decade back. My daughter lives in Oregon, and my grandson Ryan, bright kid once, all tech and talk, helps me manage my pension online. He set up the direct deposit portal, said he'd handle the boring digital parts. I let him, figuring that was progress. The first envelope that didn't belong came on a gray Tuesday morning. Official seal, return address. Federal Retirement Benefits Office stamped priority. I slid it open with my pocket knife and unfolded a crisp letter that started, "Dear Mrs. Douglas, we extend our deepest condolences for the loss of your husband, Frank Douglas." I read it twice, then a third time. Some bureaucrat had written my eulogy and mailed it to my own house. I checked the postmark, the routing code, the initials on the bottom. It was genuine, typed by someone who believed I was 6 feet under. The letter continued politely. Benefits for the late Mr. Douglas will cease as of August 31st. Outstanding funds will transfer to the registered beneficiary. My coffee went cold before I realized my hands were shaking. I walked to the mirror, half expecting not to see myself, alive, breathing, and apparently illegally deceased. I spent the rest of the morning calling the number on the letter. After 3 menus and 20 minutes of hold music, a young voice finally answered. "Federal Retirement Benefits. How may I assist you?" I said, "You can start by explaining why your system thinks I'm dead." There was a pause. Then the voice came back careful, almost pitying. "Sir, could you verify your date of death?" The line crackled. I laughed once, short and mean. "You tell me." That night, I set the letter under the desk lamp, smoothing its folds with my thumb. Somebody had filed paperwork to erase me, and in my world, paper meant proof. So I grabbed my old postal ledger, wrote the date in black ink, and underlined 3 words, "Declared dead, alive to prove otherwise." The next morning, I drove straight to the local pension office in downtown Harrisburg. The clerk behind the counter wore a badge that said, "Denise Senior Claims." She looked up from her screen, smiled politely, and then frowned like she'd seen a ghost. "Sir, may I have your name again?" "Frank Douglas, born March 2nd, 1955. I'm here because someone at your office says I'm dead." Her fingers paused over the keyboard. She typed, hesitated, and then whispered, "Oh, dear." "Not what you want to hear from the people who cut your checks." She turned the monitor slightly away from me. "According to our system, Mr. Douglas passed away August 31st. Death certificate filed, verified by the state registrar." "Verified by who?" I snapped. She stammered. A physician named Harold Malloy. The certificate was submitted electronically with a digital signature." I stared at her. "Dr. Malloy retired 5 years ago. I sent him a postcard at his goodbye party." She blinked hard, like maybe she'd misheard. "Well, sir, until the record's corrected, your benefits are frozen. You'll need to submit proof of life, photo ID, birth certificate, notarized statement." "I'll bring my pulse if you need that too," I said. But she didn't laugh. Nobody did. Back home, I logged into my pension account. Access denied, account closed, deceased. Under beneficiary, a new name glared up at me. Douglas Beneficiary Holdings LLC, an LLC, not a person. And the mailing address? My own house, line 2, labeled C.O. Ryan Douglas. My stomach turned. Ryan had set up that online portal for me, the one he called Simplified Access. Now the simplification made sense. I dialed his number. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Finally, he picked up, voice bright and rehearsed. "Hey, Grandpa, you okay?" "No, I'm not. I just came back from the pension office. They say I'm dead." Silence. Then a soft chuckle. "That's wild. Must be a system glitch. They froze my account." "Really? That's crazy. Look, I'm in a meeting right now, but I'll check it later, all right?" "You'll check it later?" I barked. "They used a fake death certificate with Malloy's name on it. You're the only one with my login." He hesitated. "Grandpa, you're stressing yourself out. Maybe it's time someone else handled your finances." The line clicked dead. I sat there listening to the hum of the dial tone until it went silent. Outside, the mail truck rolled past, the same sound I'd lived by for decades, but this time no letter came for me. Just the whisper that maybe the system didn't make a mistake at all. Maybe someone made it on purpose, and that someone had my last name. I didn't wait for Ryan to check it later. That night, I drove across town to his townhouse in Mechanicsburg. New siding, shiny black SUV, smart doorbell that blinked red as I walked up. He opened the door, still holding a gaming headset, surprise flashing before he forced a grin. "Grandpa, you could have called first." I did. 3 times. I held up the letter from the pension office. "You want to explain this?" He laughed awkwardly. "What's that?" "Your signature's on the online portal you set up for me, and now someone's declared me dead. My pension's gone. You said you'd help me, not bury me on paper." Ryan's grin faded. "Grandpa, don't do this. You've been mixing up details lately. Remember when you paid the water bill twice? Paying a bill twice isn't dying." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, I can check with the benefits office tomorrow. Maybe it's a clerical thing." I leaned closer. "Then why is my pension listed under Douglas Beneficiary Holdings LLC? That's your name on it." He froze for a split second. Small, but enough for a man who spent his life reading faces at the counter. "Grandpa," he said slowly, "I created that company to help manage your assets. It's legal, okay? You signed off months ago." "The hell I did." He smirked. Half pity, half challenge. "Maybe you don't remember. Happens with age." I stared at him. "Son, I remember every street I ever delivered to for 35 years. I can tell you which mailbox squeaked on Birch Avenue in 1987. Don't tell me I forgot signing away my life." His tone sharpened. "Then maybe someone else tricked you. But it wasn't me." "Who else had my password?" I asked quietly. He looked away. "This is exactly why I told Mom you're not handling things well. You start accusing people." "Accusing?" I said. "No, I'm documenting." He blinked. "What?" I pointed to the small voice recorder sitting half hidden in my jacket pocket. "Old postal habit. Always keep a record." His jaw tightened. "You think recording me will fix anything?" "No," I said, "but it'll make sure the truth doesn't vanish with me." I turned and walked back toward the porch. He didn't follow. But as I reached my truck, his voice called out behind me, low, hard, "You start digging, Grandpa. You'll regret what you find." I paused just long enough to look back. "Funny thing, Ryan," I said. "I spent my whole life digging through mail for other people. Guess it's time I opened a few envelopes of my own." Then I drove off into the dark. the letter on the seat beside me glowing under the dashboard light like a death certificate waiting for its witness. And by morning, I planned to find out who that witness really was. The next few days turned mean. Every phone call led to another brick wall. The pension office said my beneficiary was already verified, and until the death certificate was officially disputed, no funds would be released. Meanwhile, the bank refused to talk to a man marked deceased. I stopped at my branch on Market Street, slid my ID across the counter. The teller scanned it, frowned, and whispered to her manager. A minute later, he came out holding a file. "Mr. Douglas," he said carefully, "our records show this account was closed due to notice of death. We can't legally access it without authorization from your estate." "My estate?" I said. "I'm standing right here." He glanced over my shoulder as if expecting a ghost. "Sir, maybe your grandson can help. He's listed as trustee." That word hit harder than any punch. Trustee. Ryan had turned me into a trust fund with a tombstone on top. When I got home, there was an envelope taped to my door. Inside, a sympathy card. A sympathy card. Printed roses, gold script. "Thinking of you in this difficult time." No signature. Just a business card tucked inside for Douglas Beneficiary Holdings, LLC. The address? My own house. I looked across the street. Neighbors who'd waved for 20 years now turned away too quickly. Old Mrs. Keller crossed her arms and said, "We all thought the memorial was this weekend." "Memorial?" I asked. Ryan said it'd be small, private. My stomach tightened. They were burying me in conversation before the ground was even dug. Inside, the answering machine blinked. One new message. I pressed play. Ryan's voice filled the kitchen, smooth, rehearsed. "Grandpa, I know you're upset. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The paperwork's done. Just rest." I stared at the phone until the tape clicked. Then I noticed another envelope on the counter. Must have come with the morning mail. Return address. County Vital Records Office. I tore it open. Inside was a photocopy of my own death certificate. Official seal, signature, Harold Malloy, Maryland. Date of death, August 31st. Cause, cardiac arrest in residence. Filed by, next of kin, Ryan Douglas. I sank into the chair. The old wood creaked under my weight like it wanted to say something but didn't dare. I ran my fingers along the embossed seal. It was real. They hadn't just stolen my money. They'd stolen my existence. On the bottom corner, a tiny code printed in black ink read, "Submitted electronically by user ID, R. Douglas 93. The proof was sitting there in plain sight. So I took out my postal ledger, wrote the time, and underlined one line twice. Evidence collected. Need witness. Then I looked out the window toward the street light flickering over my mailbox. For the first time in my life, that light didn't mean delivery. It meant surveillance, and somebody out there was watching to make sure I stayed dead. I used to joke that retirement was just another word for freedom. Turns out, freedom's hard to feel when the world's already written your obituary. 2 days after that death certificate arrived, my debit card stopped working. The clerk at the grocery store ran it twice before she said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Douglas. It says the account holder's deceased." I felt the eyes behind me, sympathetic, curious, a few amused. I left the cart where it was and drove home with nothing but air in the back seat. At the post office, my old co-workers gave me that same uneasy look. One of them, Mitch, said quietly, "Frank, rumor is Ryan's selling your house. Something about settling the estate." "My estate's still breathing," I said, but even I heard the tremor in my voice. When I got back to the house, A yellow notice flapped on the door. Property transfer pending county assessment division. The same place I'd paid taxes to for 40 years now listed me as the late owner. I tore it down and sat on the porch till dusk. Cars passed, dogs barked, sprinklers clicked on. Normal sounds, but they didn't belong to me anymore. I was a ghost with a mortgage. That night, I heated a can of beans and ate them straight from the pot, the spoon clanking like a metronome for how far I'd fallen. The phone rang once. I didn't answer. When I finally checked the message, it was Ryan again. "Grandpa, stop calling the agencies. You're making a fool of yourself. Just accept things and let me handle what's left." What's left? The words burned. I walked through the empty house, Carol's photo, the flag from her father's funeral, my service pin from the postal union, all reminders that I'd lived a real, documented life. And somehow, on paper, it meant nothing. For the first time, I doubted myself. Maybe I had signed something without remembering. Maybe I had slipped. Maybe the world was right, and I was the crazy old man chasing ghosts in his mailbox. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my old ledger. Every page was filled with decades of perfect handwriting, dates, routes, numbers. I stared at the most recent line, "Declared dead, alive to prove otherwise." The ink hadn't even faded yet. Somewhere deep in me, a quiet voice said, "If you stop now, he wins." I closed the book, pressed it to my chest, and whispered to the dark, "Not yet, Carol. Not yet." Then, just before midnight, headlights swept across my front window. A car idled in my driveway for a full minute before backing out again. Slow, deliberate, like whoever was inside wanted me to see it. I watched the taillights fade down the street and whispered, "If they think I'm too weak to fight, they picked the wrong corpse." Because tomorrow, I'd start digging through paper the same way I used to dig through mail, and I always found the truth. Sleep didn't come that night. I sat at the table watching the clock tick from midnight to 3, the sound steady as a heartbeat I refused to lose. Somewhere between the second and third cup of coffee, I realized something simple. If they could kill me on paper, I could resurrect myself the same way. Every lie leaves a trail, and paper trails are what I spent 40 years sorting. By dawn, I had the ledger open and a new heading written across the top. Proof of life, case hash 001. Step 1. Gather documentation. I pulled out my original Social Security card, my birth certificate, Carol's marriage license, and my expired postal ID. All real, all stamped, all dated. Step 2. Verify the signature on that death certificate. Step 3. Find a name inside the system who'd still believe me. That last one took longer. Most of my old contacts were retired or gone, but one name kept coming back. Martha Bell, office manager at the Federal Retirement Benefits Division. We'd shared the same cafeteria for 2 decades. She was the kind who never lost a file or a memory. I found her number in an old directory and called. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Federal Benefits, this is Martha." "It's Frank Douglas," I said. "And despite what your database says, I'm still breathing." Silence. Then a low gasp. "Frank? Lord, I saw your notice last week. They said wrong. Someone filed a fake certificate. My pension's frozen, my bank account's gone, and my grandson's behind it." She exhaled, slow. "You always kept records, didn't you? Every page since '82. Then bring them, not through the front desk. Back door, loading dock. Noon tomorrow." I wrote the time down in the ledger. The way she said it told me she knew this wasn't a clerical error. Before hanging up, she added, "Frank, be careful who you trust. If that certificate cleared, somebody inside pushed it through. That line sat with me all day. It wasn't just Ryan. He'd needed help from someone behind a government login. I spent the afternoon scanning my documents into a thumb drive and labeling each file like evidence. ID 01_birth, ID 02_marriage, ID 03_union badge. When I was done, the drive looked small in my palm, but it carried my entire existence. As the sun dropped, I tucked it into my jacket pocket and checked the porch one last time. Same street, same mailbox, but for the first time in weeks, the place didn't feel like a tomb, because tomorrow I wasn't going to plead for my life. I was going to prove it. And somewhere out there, the people who buried me on paper were about to watch the dead man walk through their door. I showed up at the back dock of the Federal Retirement Office 10 minutes early, wearing the same gray windbreaker I'd worn every winter shift at the post office. Old habits die hard. Martha was waiting by the freight elevator, hair pinned tight, clipboard in hand like nothing had changed since 1998. She didn't waste time with hugs. "You've caused quite a stir, Frank." "I'm not the one who filed a death certificate," I said. She pressed the elevator button. "Let's see who did." We rode up in silence, the hum of the lift louder than both of us. On the third floor, she led me through a side hall to her cubicle. Small, neat, paper stacked like a fort. She shut the blinds and slid a folder across the desk. "Your case file," she whispered. I shouldn't even have access, but I still know the old codes. Inside was my entire life on paper, employment history, pension disbursements, even my union complaints from the 80s. At the back, clipped separately, was the death certification package. Martha pointed to the header. "Submitted through Employee Portal ID Arbel Temp 03. That's not me. Looks like a temporary login generated from internal HR." She flipped to the next page. "Digital signer, Harold Malloy, Maryland. But this doctor ID hasn't been active since 2017. "So someone spoofed both ends," I said. She nodded grimly. "Exactly. To push a fraudulent death certificate through, you need two confirmations, a medical signer and a family claimant. Guess who filled the claimant field?" "Ryan Douglas," I said. "Bingo." I took out my ledger, writing every detail word for word. Martha leaned closer. "If you want to win this, you'll need to prove two things. 1, the document's fake. 2, the money trail leads to him. Can you help with that?" She thought for a moment, then said quietly, "Off the record, yes. My cousin works compliance at the State Digital Registry. She can trace the upload location of that file, the IP, the device, maybe even the timestamp." "Do it," I said, "and I'll handle the rest." She smiled faintly. Always the old postal man, step by step, everything logged. Before I left, she printed a single sheet from the system. It showed the routing history of my benefits account, the transfer of remaining funds to Douglas Beneficiary Holdings, LLC. She circled it in red. "Here's your starting line." Back in my truck, I spread my ledger across the steering wheel and wrote the plan in 4 lines, same as I used to draft route maps. 1, trace the death certificate upload. Identify every fund transfer. 3, collect physical proof of forgery. 4, expose it publicly. I underlined the last step twice. As I started the engine, my phone buzzed. A blocked number. When I answered, a man's voice I didn't recognize said, "Mr. Douglas, we understand you're disputing your record. Stop now before you make this worse." "Who is this?" I asked, but the line clicked dead. I sat there a long minute, the warning echoing through the cab. Then I turned the key and said to nobody, "If they're calling threats in now, I'm getting close. And the closer I got, the harder I planned to hit. The next morning, I drove to a worn-out strip mall south of town where Martha's cousin worked out of a state records satellite office. No sign on the door, just a small plaque that said, Digital Compliance Division. Inside smelled like printer toner and cheap coffee. The cousin, a wiry woman named Laura Perez, met me in a cubicle stacked with servers. Martha had briefed her. "You're lucky I still owe her a favor," she said, sliding a keyboard toward herself. "You said the certificate was filed August 31st, right?" I nodded and handed over the document copy. She typed for maybe 2 minutes before frowning. "Here we go." The submission came from an IP in Camp Hill, home broadband, not an agency server. "Can you see the name?" I asked. She squinted at the screen. "Router registered to Douglas Beneficiary Holdings, LLC." I felt my throat tighten. "That's my grandson's company." She printed the log, a timestamp, the address, and the account ID used for login, R. Douglas 93. "There's your upload fingerprint," she said. "Physical proof of the file's origin." I took the page, slid it carefully into a clear binder sleeve. Physical evidence #1, first step complete. Next, I headed straight to my bank. A young banker named Steve met me in the lobby. I'd known his father back in my route days. He glanced around before whispering, "Frank, I can't talk about your account on record. But if I were you, I'd request a financial transfer history under the Freedom of Information Clause. That forces disclosure." He slipped me a blank form, unsigned. "Don't tell anyone I gave you this." I filled it out on the hood of my truck, every line printed clean. Then I mailed it certified, tracking number logged in my ledger like it was sacred text. That evening, I set up a small camera in my kitchen, the kind postal inspectors used to use, pointed right at my desk. If anyone came snooping again, I'd have them on film. Just after midnight, headlights flashed outside. A car slowed in front of my driveway, engine idling. Through the blinds, I saw Ryan's SUV. He didn't get out. He just sat there for a full minute, phone to his ear, watching my front door. Then he drove off. The next morning, my mailbox held a single white envelope, no return address. Inside was a handwritten note in block letters. "Stop digging. Dead men don't file complaints." I folded the note once, twice, and slipped it beside the IP trace report. 2 pieces of proof now, one digital, one physical, both pointing to the same person. I called Martha that afternoon. She answered in a whisper. "Frank, listen carefully. My cousin ran the upload log past her supervisor. It flagged an internal override. Someone in the system approved it after hours. They're scared." "Who?" I asked. "An employee named Reynolds in verification. He's on Ryan's contact list." I wrote the name in my ledger, bold and underlined. "Then that's where we go next." As I hung up, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mr. Douglas," a calm male voice said, "you're making this worse for everyone. Walk away." I smiled to myself, voice steady. "You tell Ryan," I said. "The dead man's still delivering." And tomorrow, I'd start knocking on the doors of the living who helped bury me. I didn't call ahead this time. By Thursday evening, I was standing on Ryan's front porch again, folder tucked under my arm, the one marked proof of life. The TV inside was loud, some sports game, but I could hear him laughing with friends. When he opened the door and saw me, the laughter stopped cold. "Grandpa," he said slowly, "you can't just show up like this." "Good," I said. "Then it won't ruin the surprise." I walked right past him into the living room. 3 of his buddies sat on the couch, beers halfway to their lips. "Fellas," I said, nodding politely. "I just came by to thank my grandson for filing my death certificate. Nice work, by the way. They said I looked peaceful." The laughter died completely. Ryan's face went red. "Don't start." I dropped the folder on the coffee table, papers fanning out. "Here's the upload log from the state's database. IP traced to your house. User ID rdouglas93. You did this." He shook his head, trying to smirk. "That's fake. You could have typed that yourself." I flipped another sheet forward. "Digital Compliance Division seal, signed by an officer named Perez. That official enough for you?" One of his friends muttered. "Dude, what the hell?" Ryan grabbed the papers, flipping fast, his hands shaking. "You're crazy, Grandpa. You don't understand how these systems work." "Oh, I understand," I said. "You uploaded a forged death certificate under a dead doctor's ID, and you funneled my pension into your LLC. You didn't think an old mailman could track a digital trail, did you?" He laughed, sharp and hollow. "Nobody's gonna believe you. Everyone thinks you've lost it. You walk around town talking about conspiracies." I smiled. "Then I guess it's lucky I brought proof for everyone to see." I reached into my jacket and set my phone on the table, on the screen. The video of the state server log, the timestamp scrolling clearly. Ryan lunged for it, but one of his friends held him back. "Man, what is this?" he asked. "It's fraud," I said. "Federal level. You might want to step away before you end up as witnesses." Ryan's breathing went sharp. "You can't threaten me." "I'm not threatening," I said evenly. "I'm confirming. I already filed a report with the compliance office. They'll audit every transfer from Douglas Beneficiary Holdings starting tomorrow." His eyes widened. "You did what?" "Paper trail, kid," I said. "The same thing you used to kill me will bury you." He pointed a shaking finger. "You think this is over? You go public, and I'll make sure everyone sees the crazy old man ranting about ghosts. I'll have you declared incompetent for real." I picked up my folder, calm as if I'd just sorted mail. "Then I'll see you in court, alive and verified." When I turned for the door, he shouted after me, "You can't prove it was me." I stopped just long enough to look back. "Sure I can," I said. "Your upload ID says otherwise." I stepped out into the cool night air, my heart pounding steady, not from fear, but from momentum. Back in the truck, I recorded a note into my ledger. Confrontation complete. Admission by reaction. Threats received. Then I noticed a car parked across the street. Engine running, lights off. Same sedan that had idled in front of my house 2 nights ago. Inside, I saw a man in a suit talking into a phone. When he noticed me looking, he pulled away fast. Whoever was bankrolling Ryan had deeper pockets than family, and tomorrow they'd make their move. The first shot back came before sunrise. At 6:14 a.m., my doorbell camera pinged. When I checked the feed, there was no visitor, just an envelope stuck between the screen door and the frame. Inside, a printed photo of me at Martha's office the day before. Across the bottom, someone had scrawled in red marker, "Stop before you join your file." I called the police. They took the envelope, filed a report, and left without much to say. One of them muttered, "Could be a prank." I'd heard that tone before. The polite disbelief of people who'd already chosen their version of the story. By noon, I got a call from the county's verification officer, the same man Martha had mentioned, Reynolds. His voice was smooth as silk. "Mr. Douglas, I understand you've been spreading some rather wild accusations. You should know falsifying government documents is a federal crime." "I'm aware," I said. "That's why I'm reporting the person who filed mine." He chuckled. Then maybe keep your head down until this clears. You wouldn't want your mental state questioned again, would you? The line went dead. That afternoon, a car rolled slowly past my house 3 times. Black sedan, tinted windows, same one I'd seen outside Ryan's place. On the 4th pass, it stopped long enough for me to get the plate number. I wrote it straight into the ledger. Around sunset, there was a knock on the back door. 3 hard raps. I grabbed the old wrench I kept under the counter and opened it just a crack. Standing there was Earl Thompson, my neighbor from 2 doors down, a retired state trooper who'd spent half his life pulling over idiots who thought the law was optional. "Frank," he said, holding up his phone, "you in trouble?" "Why?" He turned the screen. The local news site had a headline, "Elderly man impersonates dead relative. Investigated for pension fraud." My own picture stared back at me. A grainy DMV photo from 10 years ago. I felt my knees go weak. "They're flipping the story." Earl nodded grimly. "Someone's feeding them information. But don't worry. I know a guy in cybercrime. Still owes me. He can check that IP log you mentioned. Make sure it holds up in court." That was the first good news I'd heard in days. I handed him a copy of the printout. "It's all here. Time, address, Idaho. Ryan's fingerprints in digital ink." He studied it and said, "Then we nail them. But you need to stay put tonight." "Why?" "Because this doesn't look like just family greed anymore," he said. "This looks organized. That LLC your grandson runs, someone's using it for bigger laundering." He left with the papers, promising to call in the morning. I locked every door and window in the house, then sat by the kitchen light with the wrench still in my hand. At midnight, my phone buzzed again. "Unknown number," I answered. Ryan's voice came through, cold and flat. "You think the cops are going to save you, old man? I've got signatures, witnesses, doctors. Hell, I've got the story. You've got nothing but that stupid notebook." I looked at the ledger open in front of me. Every page neat, numbered, dated. The same handwriting for 40 years. "You're wrong," I said quietly. "This book outlived every lie you've told." He laughed, then hung up. Outside, headlights flickered once, then went dark. Whoever sat in that car was still out there. But now I had Earl, and maybe, just maybe, the law back on my side. And tomorrow, when the digital report came back, I'd know exactly how deep this hole went. Earl called at 9 the next morning. His voice was sharp, alert, cop mode. "Frank, I got your proof," he said. "And you were right." He came over half an hour later with a flash drive and a grin that could cut glass. "My buddy in cybercrime pulled the access log from the state registry," he said, sliding it across my table. "Your grandson's upload didn't just spoof a doctor. It came from a VPN account paid with the same debit card tied to his LLC. The digital signature traces back to a MacBook registered to Ryan Douglas." That sentence felt like oxygen after weeks underwater. "Every timestamp lines up," Earl continued. "August 31st, 10:47 p.m. The same minute your phone logged a missed call from him. Looks like he wanted to make sure you'd find out after the fact." I stared at the printouts. My name, his ID, his machine. It wasn't rumor anymore. It was evidence carved in data. Physical evidence #2. Earl leaned back. "We've got enough for the DA, but if you want him cornered in public, we wait. Let him talk first, hang himself on record." That fit my style just fine. By noon, Martha called, her voice trembling with something between fear and victory. "Frank, internal audit just confirmed Reynolds approved your file after hours. He's been suspended. The state's launching an investigation." So there it was, the insider link. Ryan had bribed or blackmailed a mid-level verifier to clear the fake death. I wrote it all in the ledger. 10:47 p.m. upload. Same card as LLC. Reynolds suspended. Link confirmed. When I finished, I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. I wasn't the confused old man chasing ghosts. I was the witness holding the rope that had hanged their whole scheme. That evening, Earl stopped by again. He'd brought someone with him, a woman in a navy suit, badge clipped to her belt. "Frank, this is Special Agent Heller, Financial Crimes Division," he said. Heller shook my hand firmly. "Mr. Douglas, I've reviewed your case. We believe your grandson's LLC is part of a money laundering chain. He's not just stealing from you. He's helping move stolen federal funds through fake beneficiaries." I let that sink in. Ryan hadn't just tried to erase me. He'd used me as a front for a criminal network. Heller continued, "We're building the case. What we need now is a statement and consent to trace the rest of your accounts. Once we have that, we'll move in." I signed without hesitation, my pen steady as ever. She nodded. "You'll want to stay somewhere safe tonight." "Safe?" I said. "Ma'am, I spent 30 years walking night routes with a flashlight and a bag full of checks. I'll be fine." Still, I noticed Earl didn't leave after she did. He parked his truck right out front, engine off, keeping watch. Around midnight, my phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number again. When I answered, Ryan's voice was panicked this time. "Grandpa, what the hell did you do? Agents came by my office. They froze the accounts." I said quietly, "You wanted to handle my estate, remember? Guess you finally get to behind bars." He shouted something incoherent before the line went dead. Outside, the sirens started up somewhere distant. Blue light flashed faintly against my curtains. Tomorrow would end this. And for the first time since they buried me on paper, I felt alive in every way that mattered. The courthouse smelled like old paper and nervous sweat. When you've spent your life sorting envelopes, you learn what tension feels like in a room, and this one was packed to the rafters with it. Ryan sat at the defendant's table in a fitted suit, jaw clenched, eyes darting anywhere but toward me. Beside him was his lawyer, whispering fast, trying to look calm. Across the aisle sat Agent Heller and Earl, with a stack of binders so thick they could have stopped a bullet. The judge called us to order. Case of Douglas versus Douglas and Douglas Beneficiary Holdings, LLC. Allegations: fraud, forgery, and identity falsification. When it was my turn, I stood, voice steady as the mail routes I used to walk. "Your Honor," I said, sliding my ledger forward, "these are the records of every pension payment I've ever earned. Dates, deposits, signatures. This is my life's proof. And these," I nodded to the binders, "are the forgeries that tried to erase it." Heller opened the first folder. The fake death certificate, the IP trace log, the payment records tied to Ryan's LLC. Then she played the audio recording from my doorbell camera, the anonymous voice warning, "Stop before you join your file." Her voice cut through the room. This shows intent to intimidate a living witness. The judge examined the evidence silently for nearly a minute before asking Ryan's attorney, "Does your client dispute these findings?" The man shuffled papers, stammered, "We request time to verify," but Ryan interrupted, voice cracking. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. Reynolds said it was legal, just a way to expedite the inheritance." That was it. A confession, right there under oath. Heller spoke sharply. "Mr. Douglas, you just admitted to submitting fraudulent documents under a false physician's ID. That's a federal offense." The judge banged the gavel once. "Enough. Evidence is clear. This court finds Ryan Douglas guilty of fraud, forgery, and elder exploitation. All assets seized pending restitution. The LLC is dissolved. Criminal charges to proceed to federal court. Ryan's lawyer slumped. Ryan himself went pale, muttering, "You can't do this to me. I was saving the family from your mistakes." I met his eyes for the first time in months. "I spent 40 years saving other people's mail, Ryan. The only mistake I made was trusting you with mine." The bailiff cuffed him right there, the metal clicking like punctuation on the end of a long, ugly sentence. When they led him past, he wouldn't look at me. Outside, the autumn air felt sharper, cleaner, like it had been waiting for this day too. Earl clapped me on the shoulder. "Told you the truth would deliver itself." Heller smiled faintly. "Your documentation was better than half the cases I see. You ever thought of consulting?" I laughed for the first time in months. "Nah, I'm retired. Again." Back home, I set the ledger on the kitchen table under the warm lamplight. Next to it, I placed two documents, the audit report and the official court ruling, proof that Frank Douglas was, in fact, alive and the rightful owner of his pension. I poured a cup of coffee, same way I had for 40 years, and wrote one final entry in neat black ink. Case closed. Justice delivered. The man they declared dead had just delivered his last letter, and it was addressed to the truth itself. It's been 3 months since the court handed down its ruling. The pension's flowing again. Same amount, same date, like nothing ever happened. But everything did happen, and I'll never forget it. Most of the money Ryan stole will take years to recover. But I'm not counting dollars anymore. I've got my name back, my home, and every neighbor who once whispered about the crazy old man now nods and says, "Morning, Mr. Douglas." That's worth more than any check. Earl still drops by for coffee. Martha retired last week with a plaque on her desk that says, "Proof never lies." And me, I still keep the ledger open on the table. Fresh page, new heading, alive and accounted for. If you've listened this far, thank you. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories Men U55 America, because stories like mine deserve to be heard.